Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Ian Hitchcock, and I'm an organizer with the Vermont Natural Resources Council. And I am absolutely thrilled to be joined today by Becca White, the Community Engagement Manager from Efficiency Vermont, who has really been helping to spearhead some great thinking around the Button Up Vermont campaign. Just in case folks aren't aware, Button Up Vermont is a years running campaign now that's designed to help encourage Vermonters to think about how can they seal up their homes and make sure that they are well insulated and ready for winter when it comes. I know many of the folks on this call have participated in Button Up before, and obviously this year, in the times of COVID and social distancing that we're living in, we aren't going to be able to do the same sorts of things we've done before with Button Up in terms of large community events or kind of in-house parties or walkthroughs. So Becca and the team at Efficiency Vermont have been doing a lot of good thinking around, how can we make Button Up a campaign that, really works for Vermonters, that achieves its mission of helping folks, know to seal up their homes and find resources to do that, but how to do that in this time of social distancing. So they've got a lot of great ideas around, ways that you can engage your community in this work without having to put anyone's health or safety at risk by having in-person gatherings. And I am very excited for you all to hear what we've been thinking about. Please, as you come up with questions, we're going to have plenty of time at the end of Becca's presentations for more Q&A. So please type your questions into the chat bar in the GoToWebinar control panel along the bottom there, and you will be able to ask Becca and myself whatever questions you would like, and I'll happily read those out at the end of the presentation. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, I will turn it over to Becca.
Yay, thanks, Ian. It's nice to be here with everybody, even if we're not in person. I know I'm getting used to the webinar format and the Zoom calls and the online video chats. So if you're not sick of them already, I hope, if you are sick of them already, I hope this is enjoyable. And if you are not sick of them already, I hope you don't have many more to get you to that point. So yeah, as Ian said, I'm Becca White. I am the Community Engagement Manager, one of them from Efficiency Vermont, and I've been tasked with the Button Up campaign for the last year. Last year was my first year doing the Button Up Vermont campaign, and my very first meeting on my very first day at Efficiency Vermont was to talk about how to kick off the campaign. So I'm excited to jump in this year with having the experience from last year and more time to do planning. So to dive right in, Button Up Vermont is a campaign that actually isn't owned by one group. Efficiency Vermont doesn't run the Button Up campaign. We don't own the Button Up campaign. VNRC doesn't own the Button Up campaign. It's actually what we call a third-party brand. So the idea is that partners from all over the state work together to bring forward education around weatherization. So I've got a few of our supporting partners here. We've got many more. And you'll notice in the corner, all of the regional planning commissions in Vermont have in some way, shape, or form signed on to the campaign. So I could have put all of their logos up there, but I decided to just keep it simple and give you some typeface of regional planning commissions. But what I really appreciate is that we have partners who are utilities, we have partners who are nonprofits, and we have partners who are actively doing the work of weatherization. So it's a great group of people who are all dedicated towards one mission, and that mission includes supporting you as towns who are thinking about Button Up and potentially are signing up to be a part of the campaign. So I wanted to start by saying a big thank you to everyone who participated last year. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see just a snapshot of some of the successes we had last year. In addition to those successes, we had just about 92,000 engagements on Facebook. That's pretty impressive to me. 42 different newspaper ads, and we also had 7,500 folks, a little bit more than that, who actually looked at the Button Up website throughout the campaign. So those numbers in itself, just like round of applause for everyone who participated last year, because whether or not you had folks show up to an event in your community, or you just had folks sign up for a home energy visit or read a newspaper ad, all of that contributes to weatherization and folks making the decision to weatherize their home. So shout out. And I include the photo on the right because it's a image of a community event that we had last year. And I did just want to give a little bit of a note that that's not what this year's campaign is going to look like. I love the fact that we were able to have such great community events last year, and I do hope we can at some point get back to that, but I'll dive into that now. We won't be in person, but let me click my screen. This year is different, as Ian spoke about. If you're familiar with COVID-19 and its impact, it's wide-reaching, and it's definitely something that we took into account for this year's campaign. So the theme this year is neighbors helping neighbors, and that's in part coming from what I personally be experiencing and what I think most Vermonters have been experiencing, which is in a time when we're not able to be physically close to each other, we're finding ways to support our neighbors, support our local economy, support folks who we might not have ever interacted with before in new ways, in creative ways. So to capitalize on that and to build off of the spirit I think that we're seeing in Vermont in many other ways, we chose to move forward with the campaign around neighbors helping neighbors. And I think it's important to think about how we as individuals can support one another, but also how a campaign like Button Up Vermont can empower individuals to help their community at large. So that's really the theme. I love the concept of neighbors helping neighbors. And of course, you know, if we're going through the presentation, I'd love to hear feedback at the end on if that theme resonates with you or if there are ways we can improve on it. So I did want to start by just talking about, you know, why weatherization. It might feel a little bit challenging to bring ourselves to talk about environmental issues or weatherization at this point in time when it feels like there's so much information, so much in the news. I know at the start of COVID-19, I was thinking, gosh, like, how do I motivate to continue to do some of the work that I'm doing? But what I realized is that weatherization in particular is extremely relevant in today in light of COVID-19 and light of economic difficulties most Vermonters are experiencing. It's actually even more relevant in many ways than it was in 2019. And the three reasons that I look to for why it's so important to talk about weatherization now, it comes down to safety, money, and security. So when I think about safety, I think about having a professional weatherization contractor who can ensure that you have the right amount of fresh air moving in and out of your home to keep you healthy, while also allowing you to be warm in the winter and not heating the outdoors, and at the same time reducing mold and respiratory illness. So there's a lot there in the safety side that I don't think we've talked about with weatherization in previous years, but very relevant. The other important factor is money. As Vermonters, we've seen every year the value of lowering energy bills and the cost of heating and cooling our homes. And winter used to really be the only season that most of us thought about how to spend our money when it comes to fuel. And the average Vermonter saves about $500 a year when they stop like those annoying drafts or they air seal. So even though it had a huge impact in the past, I think for many Vermonters, the idea of saving where they can save is important. Being able to invest in your home, which you might be spending a lot more time in, keeping it at a comfortable hot or cold temperature, and also saving money, all of that is even more relevant. And then the last piece is security. It kind of falls under like the financial side as well. But suddenly, it's very critical for Vermonters to think about their utility bills. It's very critical for us to think about the safety and security of our state. Weatherization gives Vermonters financial flexibility, which can mean a lot during a crisis. And at the same time, we can't meet our state energy goals and climate goals without significant weatherization in almost all of our buildings. So that's really the relevancy for me. If you need a pep talk for for 2020, but let's get into the actual campaign. So for Button Up 2020, the goals are to have a physically distant and fun campaign, to support low-income weatherization with community action. And at the same time, in the previous years, we have had a focus on comprehensive weatherization, which is more of a whole home picture. We're also elevating DIY projects this year, which if you've been involved with Button Up in the past, DIY or do-it-yourself projects have taken on a different role in different years for the campaign. And this year we are lifting that up more, knowing that many Vermonters are looking for low, no-cost solutions and also have potentially time and access to places in their homes because of the changing circumstances. So did want to highlight that. And to just jump right into what is the campaign offering, that's the next slide. So for the 2020 season, there's a bunch going on. So even though we're physically distant, there's still some cool things we're doing. I know Ian and I are considering some trainings for our energy committees and those who are interested in being button-up coordinators. We're also, giving you tools in your toolbox to make the campaign a success and any future work you might be doing. We're also working on regional presentations. So a big part of the feedback I got from surveys that you completed last year, thank you to everyone who took the time to do that. We did go through those, we do read them, and I do take note of every single comment. The theme that came across from those surveys was folks who had the ability to do a large regional event. I'm thinking like Chittenden County, for example, we had a fabulous, almost like energy fair style event. Folks wanted to move in that direction. I heard that from many of the surveys. People wanted to have bigger events or events that brought in a crowd of people kind of as a one big thing rather than individual workshops in the state. Knowing that we can't be physically together in that way, but still trying to capture that spirit, I've been working alongside our regional planning commissions, create customized presentations that they can offer as webinars. So instead of having individual presentations that each town would host as a webinar or host in another digital format, we're going to be promoting the regional presentation. So working alongside your RPC to promote those and find the right topics to fit into the different customizable options, that'll be important. Moving on to Weatherization Wednesdays. This is my I think, the most exciting part of the campaign when it comes to digital offerings. The goal for Weatherization Wednesdays is to have a short 20-30 minute burst of interesting content every Wednesday or every other Wednesday that's available online. So if you're an energy committee and you're thinking about promoting a certain type of weatherization, maybe a specific DIY project, or you want to share out content with your community, I could see the Weatherization Wednesdays being a great resource for you. My hope is that those are fun and engaging, that we include things like trivia, for all of our trivia buffs out there. We have something that's interactive, so you could maybe win a prize. You could comment, all of that good stuff. that is important to me because I know that when I think about weatherization, I think we haven't quite hit the nail on the head in making it exciting or engaging. So doing something that's fun and engaging feels really good for this year's campaign. So then moving along the fun circle, we also have something brand new this year. And I would love to hear your feedback on this because this idea came directly from feedback we heard from participating communities. So what I'm talking about is the opportunity to fund low-income weatherization. Many of you reached out through surveys and just through reaching out to connect with me, saying that you wanted to support low-income weatherization. If you're familiar with our community action agencies, you know that they have free weatherization, and we have that as something throughout the state. And what we've identified is an opportunity to create a flexible pool of dollars that those weatherization agencies can pull from to support low-income weatherization. Now, the ribbon hasn't been tied on this yet. We're working closely with the Vermont Community Foundation to set it up. But the idea there is that we would have the Button Up Vermont Fund, and you as an individual community or as an individual could fundraise or donate to the Button Up Vermont Fund and see directly how those funds support low-income weatherization. On top of that, we're working closely with the Vermont Community Foundation to identify donors to the fund and ideally having a matching opportunity. So if you as a community said, hey, we would love to work to fundraise towards the Button Up Vermont Fund to help our neighbors, we could potentially see matching funds. But that's all in the works. I don't want to give too much away. It's still being worked on, but it's the newest thing for this year's campaign, and trying to get at how can we support our neighbors and meet that need and fill a gap in service. So moving on the circle, we also have a video library that'll be on the Button Up Vermont webpage with how-tos, DIY videos, and I could see that being a great thing to pull from to just spread the news to your community, share some videos, share some engaging content. And last but certainly not least, we have free home energy visits. Last year, you all threw it out of the park, hit it out of the park with all the home energy visit signups. This year, same style as last year, where an energy consultant from Efficiency Vermont would be doing the free home energy visit, not an audit visit, just to be clear, and I can answer questions on that. Same concept as last year, but they will be virtual. So in the sign up sheet that I have at the end of the video, you'll see if you do go in and you go to sign up, that is a question we ask if you would like to use virtual home energy visits to share with your community. Understanding that virtual doesn't work for everybody, there is a phone consultation option as well. And I'd love to get feedback too, because this is a new thing, trying to be understanding with virtual home energy visits and making everyone feel safe, but also understanding that a virtual visit might not be the best fit for every community. So I'd love your feedback on that. So that's the menu of options. I dive a little bit deeper in the next slide on 4 of those options. So I'll just leave that up there for a moment. I'm still working on a few other ideas, trying to get those in place. So there might be new things added to this list, but the core of the campaign this year will be those regional presentations, access to the free home energy visits virtually, the Weatherization Wednesdays, and then the Button Up Vermont Fund. Oops, let's get forward or back. I did want to touch on the incentives. Last year we had an incentive of up to $4,000, and for low to moderate income Vermonters, and for upper income earners up to $2,000 and 50% of the cost of a home performance with Energy Star job. At this moment, the incentives have increased, and at the minimum, we know for September, moving into the end of November, we will still have the same incentives as last year, which were fabulous. And we actually have an increase at this exact moment with those incentives, which end August 31st. Unless we have more funding available. So I can talk more about that if folks want more details. I also wanted to bring up the DIY rebate, which is $100. And that's 2 great incentives and a lovely face painting from last year. Only got a few more slides, but I wanted to be really clear about what are we asking for community participants to do. We'd love you to work with your regional planning commission to drive attendance to those step up to button up customized presentations. We'd love for you to share information about the virtual home energy walkthroughs, to promote Weatherization Wednesdays, and also to consider fundraising for the Button Up Vermont Fund. And of course, I couldn't help it. I had to have fun graphics. I want your creative ideas. This is a different year than we've ever experienced. So if you have something creative or a burning desire, I'd love to hear it, because I'm trying to be creative and do something different, and I would welcome any feedback on that. So not only are we asking you to do something, we also have some perks. And you can see I put trainings on without completing that section, because I do want to hear your feedback and we're still working on that piece. But the perks are free virtual home energy visits for your community if that's something you'd like. When we say a home energy visit, that means the follow-up work is also done by Efficiency Vermont. So in previous campaigns, we had asked participating towns to do some of that follow-up work with homeowners or businesses that had been exploring weatherization. Just like last year, all of that follow-up work is going to be continued to be done by Efficiency Vermont. So you don't need to worry about investing after the campaign is over a lot of your energy or time. And I will be releasing a report out on the campaign from last year. So if you're wondering how that's going, you'll find out soon. You'll also get fun content to support your work and resources to spread the news on weatherization incentives. Timeline. We have a very similar timeline to last year. If you'd like to sign up to be a participating community, I would ask that you do so before August 15th. Hopefully after this presentation, you're so jazzed that you sign up as soon as we get off. But if you need to, connect with your energy committee peers or take a vote by any chance, I'd love to know if you'd like to participate by August 15th. And if you need more information on the campaign to make a decision, I'm also happy to come to a virtual energy committee or present on the campaign. So please feel free, if you're not sure, to reach out. And that's really an open invitation. The kickoff for the campaign is September 1st. We're going to be running the campaign from September 1st until the end of November. So similar dates to last year. The Weatherization Wednesday series will be weekly or bi-weekly, depending on how many partners we're able to gain in presenting. You'll see the regional workshops starting to be scheduled. And then the virtual visits will actually start in 2021. So at the end of the campaign, there'll be a bit of a time delay between folks signing up and when they actually receive the virtual home energy visit. So that's just one note. So before we jump into questions, I just wanted to give you some action items for next steps. Please, if you can, go to the buttonupvermont.org site, check out /community-partner to sign up. Please go ahead and like and follow all the different social media channels for Button Up. As I'm sure we're all recognizing, social media, digital ways of connecting are becoming even more important. So if you have an opportunity, whether or not it's your personal account or if your energy committee or group has a social media account, please go ahead and connect with us on that, on those different platforms. Also, your regional planning commission, we're working with them directly. If you'd like to connect, if you have thoughts already, I'm sure they would be open to connecting with you. And then please, if you have a creative idea that we're missing, I'd love to hear it. One other piece that I haven't talked about yet before we get to questions or comments is that I am aware, I think most of us are, that the window dressers campaign this year is going to be different. There won't be and if you're unfamiliar with window dressers, it's a grassroots campaign that supports putting in window inserts into homes throughout Maine and now in Vermont. And this year they will not be doing in-person activities in our state. So I would love to connect with folks if you were considering being a window dressers community or you had already signed up and you're not quite sure what your fall looks like. Please connect with me. We were excited to have window dressers be a larger part of the campaign this year for Button Up, but because of the fact that they're not going to be in person in our state and just all of the complications there, I am looking forward to partnering with them in the future. But that's just a note. If you're thinking about window dressers or you are a window dressers community, the door is wide open. I'd love to work with you and support you. Okay, Ian, I think that's it.
A lot of ground to cover very quickly. Thanks so much for that, Becca. And I too am a big fan of fun graphics, so I'm really glad that your star made a cameo. We do have a bunch of a bunch of great questions coming in, and I encourage folks to please do continue to put them in the chat, and we will do our best to get to all of them. The first one says that the Heat Squad already announced they're resuming audits, and is there any possibility of EVT doing walkthroughs? I think you largely covered that. Efficiency Vermont will be doing those virtually, but this does lead to a couple of folks asking for just a little bit more detail about how the virtual home energy visits specifically will work. Are you envisioning that people would show like via iPads or cell phones an EVT staffer around specific things in the house? Can you just kind of walk through in more depth what the thinking is for those virtual home energy visits?
That's a great question. I'll just start by saying Efficiency Vermont and the Vermont Energy, the larger organization, VEIC, we're being very careful with the staff that we put in the field. And I am so excited that we're seeing partners who are being able to go into the field again. We will not be doing that with the home energy visits for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, just the risk there is great, and a company policy is to not have those in-person visits unless there is no other alternative. So virtual home energy visits are where we're landing for the time period. It may be, and I don't want to put it out there as a likely possibility, but we might be able to do in-person visits soon, maybe late in the campaign, maybe in 2021, but I wanted to plan around worst case scenario if we were to see a continuation and that we couldn't be in the field. So just wanted to start there because I hear you. Virtual home energy visits are new and different. The actual home energy visit itself virtually, it looks similar to a traditional in-person home energy visit. We've done a few of them now, and the idea is either using a smart device like an iPhone, like an iPad. You would guide the energy consultant who would be on Microsoft Teams, ideally with you, which is a platform for video sharing. You would walk through your home and identify certain spaces if you want them to take a closer look. They will then provide you with feedback on those individual things that you've shown them. In some way, I guess the pro of virtual versus in person is that you can be very specific on what you want to show. You can limit where the energy consultant goes, which you might not in the same way with an in-person visit. And you'll get a follow-up report that details the things that you went over and next steps. So it's a brand new thing for us to do these virtually. We're trying to create best practices. So I'd love your feedback on those as well. If there's things that you know that your community would want highlighted or that we should be addressing, again, open to feedback. The alternative, if you can't have a video virtual home energy visit, is a phone consultation, which would be just talking through what are the next steps or projects that you'd be interested in. Yeah, great question.
Thanks for that, Becca. Got some folks saying that they are loving the idea of the fund for low-income residents to weatherize. Although there are some questions, someone's asking us to please say more about the gap in funding that button-up fund would fill, given that community action organizations have funding already. And I'm happy to take kind of a first crack at this, if you're all right with that, Becca, and then
yeah, go ahead, Ian.
leave it to you. So what I would say about that is, while we have kind of fantastic community action agencies, we have noticed through kind of years of doing this work that there's far more demand for their services than they have the ability to supply, right? We've found, in many parts of the state, there are extensive waiting lists for low-income weatherization. There are a lot of folks that are, very deserving of and really in dire need of that service that, unfortunately, just due to, some lack of limited funding and some limited capacity of contractors or workforce, not able to get that work done in as timely a manner as I think we would all like to see. And I don't think that this particular fund is necessarily the silver bullet or the thing that will automatically kind of solve that gap. But I think we do believe that, especially in this time when so many people are struggling economically, when we really do want to lean heavily into the idea of neighbors helping neighbors, that creating an opportunity and a venue for community groups and communities to kind of pool their resources and make sure that that money is going directly to the people that are actually doing that work. Again, it won't solve the problem, but we do strongly believe that it is one of the clearest and best opportunities we can provide to communities in this time, to really give resources to the folks that are doing the most direct work among helping the most vulnerable folks among us get access to the critical weatherization services they need. Becca, I don't know if you want to add on to that at all.
Totally. And Ian, I think you've really clearly outlined what the vision of the fund is. And to add just a bit of specificity, because I think it's an important point. Our community action agencies are funded through the state, through federal programs, and we didn't want to just kind of throw money at a problem. We wanted to fill a gap that they currently can't use their funding for. So an example of that would be vermiculite remediation, for example, where, to Ian's point, that funding the state funding they use typically cannot be used to fund vermiculite remediation. So a homeowner who is eligible for free home weatherization has to essentially hope that there's extra funding available outside of what the community agency is currently getting to fund that remediation before the work can be done. So that adds to delays, and it also limits who potentially could have access to free weatherization. So the hope with the fund is to be strategic in meeting those gaps that we're seeing with our community action agencies, being able to fund low-income weatherization. There's a few other pieces to that, and as I get that fund detail listed out, I will clearly be sharing that with folks. It's also something we're working closely with different agencies on. So I hope that what we're doing is filling a gap rather than just adding to the funding. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Becca. Um, Questions about who would be presenting during a regional planning committee presentation?
Great question. I would first off say that regional planning commissions have the full ability to invite presenters to these. The framework for the presentation, I've kind of thought about it in thirds. So the first third would be a really classic step up to button up weatherization 101. So that's for our folks who really don't know where to start. Maybe weren't able to attend an in-person piece last year, but just gives you that quality content on what is weatherization, the benefits. The middle third, and the first third I assume would be presented by potentially me, or an energy consultant at Efficiency Vermont. The middle third of the presentation is what the Regional Planning Commission can choose topic-wise. That could be for your community heat pumps. Maybe you really know that there's a need to talk about heat pumps in your town. Maybe it's modern wood heating. The RPCs have the ability to pick a topic that we have already created content on that fits a need in their communities. They could also do something different. They could connect with one of our partners, for example. They could pull in VEEP, maybe the Vermont Energy Education Program. Maybe they want to pull them in and do something specific there. That could be an opportunity. Then the last third is really open for the Regional Planning Commission to decide. And I would love to see stories from communities. That's my dream, is that presentations that they end with either a local person who has a story about how they weatherized or the benefit that it had to them, or maybe a local person who does that work already who'd like to talk about what they do. I could see a lot of creativity around that. If there's a presenter that you know people will show up for in your area, maybe they're like the go-to person, I think that'd be great to try to work out how they can play a role in a regional webinar. That's a good question. I can see many presenters, but Efficiency Vermont is more than happy to do the first two parts of material.
And just another bit of context around this piece of the work that I would want to make sure folks are aware of. So it's only been in the last year or so that there has been funding available for regional planning commissions, specifically through Efficiency Vermont, to be able to kind of more directly engage with local energy work. They're trying to help fill a gap in terms of implementation of local and regional energy plans that have been developed by many of you on this webinar over the past few years. And we have seen kind of the Button Up campaign and the opportunity to host those presentations as a great way for both regional planning committee members who may not have been always, as active and engaged in the energy space to really connect with and get to know all of you, and for you all to get to know them as a resource in your local community. Because certainly something that I have found to be true as someone working to support energy committees statewide is that it can be very challenging to provide adequate support to everyone in every region when I or others don't necessarily live in those communities or go to those places as regularly as I may like. And so one of the things that we are trying to cultivate and develop is how can we make sure that there are, in addition to kind of the fantastic statewide resources that VECAN and Efficiency Vermont and others offer, how can we also make sure that there are kind of more local and regional resources available as well? So I view this piece of the Button Up campaign as really a fantastic opportunity for regional planning commission staffers who are getting involved in this work to really get to know all of you and for you all to get to know them. And on that note, Becca, do you know, is there somewhere compiled a list of kind of staffers from each regional planning commission who are kind of the lead points of contact for this that folks might be able to connect with or reach out to?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's funny because a lot of the regional planning commissions reached out to me and said, can you send me the list of participants who are interested in Button Up Vermont this year? So there's going to be definitely a meeting of minds very soon because both parties are interested. Let me check back with our regional planning commissions and see if it makes sense for me to share that out with this email blast if there's a specific point person. I would also say if you sign up on the link, that would definitely lead to me connecting you directly to your regional planning commission. So let me check back on both of those things.
Great, thank you. Someone asking, do we have educational materials on the potential savings of weatherizing and sources of money for it?
Yeah, we definitely do. So on the Button Up website, there was information last year on the savings side of things. And my hope is that the video library that we create will break that out. We also are going to continue to have a piece on the website that talks about the incentives. They're extremely rich right now. If you were thinking about weatherizing, now is the time to do it. We have the largest incentives I've seen currently. We also have some of the best financing opportunities right now, as low as no interest rate for the home energy loan, depending on your income eligibility. So I'll make sure to share out just the info we have on the incentives and financing with the folks who are participating today. We've got some links on the Efficiency Vermont site that talk about that. And I'll also highlight that again on the website because I do think that is unfortunately the bottom line for most folks is comfort is fabulous. Being secure in your home is fabulous, but it's where the rubber meets the road is the financial side.
And I really want to kind of just jump in and emphasize, to Becca's point, just how generous the incentives are at this moment. So, we will certainly include kind of more specific information about these incentives and how folks can access them in the follow-up email to the folks on this webinar. But I do want to make sure that that message gets out loudly and clearly, particularly at a time when I know so many people are struggling financially, and like the idea of investing in a capital improvement in one's home may seem completely ridiculous. But I have really been impressed with the degree of financial commitment and the kinds of resources that are being made available for that work. But I also know they're only available for a limited time. And so one of the main, I think, goals of the Button Up program in particular, but of our hopes for all of you all to share both within your networks and within your communities is, that money is available now, and we really want people to take advantage of it while it is available, because I don't know if and or when the incentives will be as generous as they are right now. So as Becca said, we all know and understand that, this is literally, where the rubber hits the road, and the dollar really often determines whether or not someone can or can't go forward. And this is a particularly good time, counterintuitive as it may seem with COVID and everything else, but for people to be able to access resources to help them make weatherization actually affordable and feasible to them.
Yeah. And I think to your point, Ian, something that I've been thinking a lot about, just as a personal anecdote, is I'm working from home full time. I know most folks are still working from home full time. If they are returning, great. But we have my office space, my separate guest room space. We weren't able to use this space before it was weatherized. It was just that uncomfortable. So I've heard from a few Vermonters who have said, we have that one part of the house that we close off for part of the year. And now that they need that extra space because they're using it in new ways, being able to have that space weatherized in a really affordable way could create a home office space, or just, hey, we need a little bit more room because we're here so much. All of those reasons are overlaid with the savings piece. Even if you might want a separate room to go to for an office space, if it doesn't make sense financially, you're not going to invest in it.
Absolutely. There's a question here about a specific educational resource, a paper booklet that was called Guide Home Energy or Home Weatherization, Learn about the benefits of air sealing and insulation. This person would be excited to give that out, but wants to make sure the information in that particular booklet is accurate and still relevant. Do you know
Yes,
offhand? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think I know what booklet they're talking about. I might even have one floating around somewhere in this office.
I'd be
It's
shocked
it's
if you
kind of
didn't.
like, yeah, I know. I was like, I think I got it in here somewhere. Um, for the most part, the benefits are still the same. The incentives, if it's from 2019, at the minimum, the incentives will remain the same. They've actually increased since 2019 and will continue to be increased until the end of August, unless the funding is still available. It could continue past that. So if you've got it from 2019, I'd say it's still relevant. But if you're not sure what year it is, feel free to just shoot me an email and I can take a look. We'll have some printable materials available on the website. But I do know if it's the booklet I think you're talking about, it's almost like a card stock. And I wouldn't expect someone to print it at home. So let me look into that because that might be, I'm trying to think if we could mail it if folks want to have it something that's set out, but tabling wise, I don't know what we would want to make available yet.
Great. We've got a bunch of questions about kind of workforce and people going into homes. I'll try to combine a few of them. So basically, there's one saying, are individual contractors still going out into the field and actually going into people's homes at this point, even if this person understands that VEIC and Efficiency Vermont are not themselves sending people into folks' homes. I guess, Becca, do you know if contractors are starting to actually do home visits?
From my understanding, most contractors are.
Okay.
There are a lot of they can, I think is the piece to know is that they can go into homes. There are limitations still. And I know many of our contract partners are trying to thread the needle of uh, being as safe as possible, being understanding of you're going into someone's home. I think the most common situation I've heard is they ask you to leave your home or to not be home for a bit while they go in. Uh, for the but for the actual work, I know that there are many contractors who are scheduling out, or for example, if they had to cancel or reschedule right at the peak of COVID-19, they are kind of filling back in their calendars. So if you know someone who's interested in weatherization, I would say the best thing to do is to just reach out directly to the contractor. There are different policies and different levels of I think comfortability with being in homes. So working out what you as a homeowner feel safe doing and what the contractor feels comfortable doing, that's a good conversation to have one-on-one. And I can also check in. We have Jen Noors is a fabulous colleague of mine, and she works directly with our contractors. And I can see if she has a gut check on what folks are doing at the moment and how many contractors are currently scheduling and going in person. Yeah.
Thanks, Becca. I think that'd be helpful. There's also some questions here about, what if just people asking if there are kind of thoughts or guidance on like what sort of precautions contractors should be taking, or what sort of things homeowners should be asking contractors, what sort of precautions around COVID that homeowners should be expecting and asking contractors to take. So if there are kind
Gosh,
of
yeah,
ways
that's a
that could be
great
shared,
question.
I think folks would appreciate that in follow up as we kind of navigate this strange new world together.
Totally. That is so that's the kind of thing that I had not thought of that is extremely helpful information. Let me check back in because at the very least we should have something on the website that gives folks just a bit of guidance on, hey, what's the right next step at this time? What's safe? I would also always advise folks, we do have some fabulous resources on vermont.gov. They give some nice guidance generally, but I do think it's fair to say, is there a document or is there something that we can direct folks to as they think about weatherization? So yeah, let me add some resources on that side.
We've got a few more questions about kind of the incentives specifically. Someone's saying that they've seen on the Efficiency Vermont website that they've got the new incentives there, but this person thought they heard you say that the funds are only available through August 31st for the enhanced incentives. And so I guess
That's true.
folks are asking about kind of the timeline and kind of the eligibility for those incentives, and kind of when do they go away, and how can people use them?
Yeah. So it's an interesting year for incentives. I'll start by saying weatherization incentives are, as I think Ian and I have both stressed, as generous as they are have ever been. Uh, right now, there is a cliff of funding for weatherization at the end of the year, and what we have for incentives is up to the $5,500 amount and up to 50% of the cost of a project, going until August 31st. Meaning that if someone completes a project by August 31st, they're in the income eligibility, they could access those funds. They could also see a no payment option for up to $900 on the home energy loan. Um, that is all contingent on those funds uh, going away potentially on August 31st. And the reason I'm being a little vague, and I apologize for that, is because we don't necessarily know how much uptake we're going to see with those incentives. And my worst case scenario is that we overpromise and underdeliver. So I do think there is a chance that moving into September, we'll still see that incentive. I don't want to promise it. When instead I'd like to happen is folks assume that they're going to get the same incentive that we saw in previous years, which will remain until the end of the year, which is that up to $4,000 and up to $2,000 and 50% of a project cost, depending on income. In best case scenario, they do complete a project and they do get those additional incentives as well. So my apologies for being vague on that. The incentives are tricky right now, knowing that we're not sure how much uptake we're going to see. So best time to weatherize is right now, and hopefully the incentives will continue into the fall, but know that they're going to be just as good as last year, which is still better than previous years.
I was about to say, I hope folks will remember that last year we were also trying to scream from the rooftops that the incentives now are the best they've ever been, and similar to unfortunately breaking like climate temperature records, like the best it's ever been seems to be we're breaking records right and left. So regardless of whether kind of the enhanced incentives remain accessible or not beyond August, even when they go away, there are still very, very generous incentives similar to levels we saw last year available too. Another question along these lines is, so are contractors able to commit to and get work done in people's homes by the end of August? And I believe this question is asked in relation to whether or not the project has to be completed by August 31st in order to get those incentives, or whether or not like something like a signed proposal would be acceptable to access those.
We are saying job complete by August 31st. So yeah, that is the tough part, I think, and why weatherization incentives are a little tricky right now. Is it is unfortunately we're saying projects complete by August 31st, and knowing where we are, that might be a stretch for some. What I'm hoping with the increased incentive is that rather than new folks signing up and being interested, we're hearing from those people who either were engaged in Button Up last year or just thought about weatherization a few years ago, and it's just always been on their mind, but this is the kick in the pants that they might need to get it done. Rather than new projects being identified and being moved forward in this short time frame, those folks could do it. I think it would take some motivation. And best case scenario, you complete your project by August 31st, you get the full amount of the incentives. Worst case scenario, you still get an incredible incentive of $4,000 or $2,000.
And one thing I've found helpful in thinking about these incentives is that when we talk about the economic impact of COVID, it also had a tremendous impact not just on people's pocketbooks, but also on independent contractors and folks themselves, right? The people who actually do that work had to pause their work for a while. So with the underlying theme of neighbors helping neighbors, and us really wanting to lean into like how can we make sure that we are showing up for and supporting people in that way, making sure that our local contractors have work and have projects they can do, especially to make up for a time when they had to essentially stop all of their work during, one of their busiest times. I think could be thought of as another way to kind of have people support their local work, support their local economy. So the financial benefits of weatherization don't necessarily only have to be for the homeowner who is saving money by having a
True.
less leaky home, but also for kind of making sure that we have the weatherization workforce and contractors are able to stay in business and be available to do this work that we know we desperately need, COVID or no COVID, going forward. This also gets at a
True.
question that was raised about whether or not there are enough contractors around the state in every county to do this weatherization work. You may have a better read on this than I, Becca. My understanding is that there are many parts of the state where we certainly have a shortage of contractors, where it is not as easy as we wish it were for people to find contractors to do this sort of work. I don't know if what your read is on that, Becca.
No, I think you've said it well, Ian. It's very dependent on how many contractors you have in your area. I would also say that workforce is not a topic that is not being discussed. It is very much in the forefront of, I think, a lot of folks' minds. And there are some really creative partnerships that are happening right now to try to address, I think, both the contractor potential shortage in parts of the state, but also think about how can we put folks back to work who maybe are from an industry that has been hit hardest by COVID-19. Are there ways to reskill Vermonters who have been looking potentially for a career change or long-term don't see themselves being in the industry they were pre-COVID-19? So there's a lot of creative things happening on that realm, and I do hope that we can address workforce in a comprehensive way moving forward. Unfortunately, the Button Up Vermont campaign, we don't have something around workforce as a part of the campaign, but I do know that, as Ian put it, anything we can do to support local contractors and Vermonters, that's a win. Anytime that we can keep dollars in state, that's a win. And I think weatherization does that in lots of different ways. Yeah.
Yep. And we've also got some folks here kind of almost doing like a live tweet at us saying, don't have any contractors that aren't overwhelmed with project right now. So it sounds like, there may be some pent up demand there, but also
Yep.
getting some, some here's and some win-wins on, saying that retraining out of work people in weatherization skills seems like something that makes a lot of sense to this crowd. And I think to a lot of us as well.
Yeah.
So we are coming up on 2 o'clock. I know we haven't gotten every question answered. I'm just doing a quick skim here. So just so folks know, this webinar has been recorded, and I will be sharing out a copy of the slides as well as Becca's contact information. And given all of the kind of follow-up fit and great questions and conversation that have come from this webinar, it may take us a little while longer than kind of the quick turnaround we like to do that follow-up email. So I appreciate folks' patience on that, but we do want to make sure that we've got, your good questions about like, what are some good safety practices to ask contractors to consider, or when you're thinking about actually doing the work, or what's more detailed and clear information on the incentives. I know that conversation can be confusing, and I want to make sure we are being as clear as possible so that you all can communicate that outward as clearly as possible. So we're going to be doing our work to make sure that we are compiling these resources. So please do give us a few days. I'd appreciate your patience as we work to get these questions answered for you as best we can. So we will be sharing the slides. Someone asking if you would need an iPhone for the virtual home visits. I believe kind of any quote unquote smart device, although sometimes mine doesn't feel so smart, but anything with kind of an internet connection and a camera would be sufficient, I believe, for teams to work. And I know that
Totally.
Efficiency Vermont would like to work with you on that.
If you're not sure, still sign up.
Exactly. So I'm glad, Becca, you did a great job of making sure the now what slide is out. If folks are interested in this campaign, I'd encourage them to go to that link and sign up as a community partner. or go back to their communities and talk about it. We will have kind of more information coming out in the coming days and weeks, but also please absolutely do feel free to reach out primarily to Becca, but I'm also happy to be involved too, with ideas around, do you like what you've heard? Are there things that don't make sense? Are there other things that you would like to see the Button Up campaign do? I think that, the folks on this call would have some great ideas around, training topics or videos
Yeah.
or, just other creative ideas, knowing that this is a time where, we are all, inventing the plane as we're flying it. And so the more minds and hands we have to make sure that we are taking full advantage of the opportunity to do things different this year, would benefit greatly from all of your input and ideas. And we very much welcome them, and I hope that you can see from Becca's descriptions just like how feedback from past campaigns is really genuinely trying to be integrated into how we do this going forward. So
Totally.
thank you all so very much for joining us. Becca, I don't know if you have any final words.
No, you nailed it, Ian. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you guys very, very much. Do have a quick shameless plug as folks are heading out the door. Apparently, Capstone Weatherization is hiring and does train. So if
Ooh,
folks, are looking for a career change or wanting to literally be in the trenches of this work, I encourage you to reach out to Capstone. Again, we'll work on compiling the follow-up materials, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you all so much, and thank you, Becca.
thank you, Ian. Bye, guys.